Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. This is the City Council Planning and Economic Development Subcommittee, 501. We're gonna get this show started. Before we go any further, I want to acknowledge my colleagues who are online. I see City Council President Tracy Whitfield, and I see Councilor Justin Hurst, who is a member of this subcommittee. So thank you guys for joining.
Counselor, thank you for the intro. Can you ask Focus or someone to let us see the whole room right now? We're just focused on Jerry.
Yes.
Yeah, let me look into that. I don't know why it's only zooming on you, Jerry. Oh,
There you go.
Look at that.
Thank you.
I was waving my hands for a little bit there, although it's gonna pick. Now it's on you, James. So I'm gonna wave my hands over here.
Now it's on me.
I will see if they can look into that. Thank you, Council President.
We'll just keep waving.
Perfect. And what I'll do is I'll have folks inside here introduce themselves, and then I'll have folks online.
I'm trying to troubleshoot it. It's just been.
Oh, that's been it.
It's been great.
So I've been told by Miss Daisy that the camera system has been a little uncooperative lately. It's something they're troubleshooting. So I would just ask folks to bear with us. Yeah.
Oh, I see you. There you go. I see you a little bit.
So Jerry, I'm going to start off with you to introduce yourself, and then we can have folks online.
Sounds good. Hi, everyone. Jerry McCafferty, Director of Housing. And you want to do introductions and then come back to me for context? Okay.
Yes. Perfect. And so we also have members of the media here. Thank you to Jeanette and James for being here. And then I would like for folks online to introduce themselves. Charles, I'll start off with you.
I'm Charles Buki at CZB. Thank you.
Right. I see Miss Denise Jordan online. Welcome, Miss Jordan.
Hi, Denise Jordan, Springfield Housing.
Perfect. I'm gonna kick it off to Miss Samantha Hamilton.
Hi everyone. Samantha Hamilton, the Public Health Institute, Live Springfield.
Perfect. And then last but not least, Miss Amber.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amber Lynch, and I work with Charles at CZB.
Perfect. So today we have two items on this public meeting. The first one being an update on the Springfield housing plan. And the second item is a recommendation for new direction for housing strategy from the city's housing plan consultant. So with that, I will kick it off with you, Ms. McCafferty.
Terrific. Thanks. Good evening, everyone. I am going to give a little bit of background on where we are on our housing plan. You may know, many people I know in the room are very familiar, but not everyone is. So I'll give enough background. We started last fall. We decided to create a housing plan largely in reaction to a lot of change and a lot that was going on in our housing market that seemed confusing, and it felt like a really good time to get some expertise and bring some expertise in and think about how we're approaching our housing policy. The city we put out an RFP last fall, got quite a lot of interest, a lot of people applied. We selected CZB in large part because they work a lot with cities like Springfield. We call them gateway cities around the country. They're legacy cities, but older cities with a lot of the challenges, but also assets that we have. So we selected them. We've been working with them since January. I think a couple of things to know about the process. We wanted to make sure that there was a lot of local input and guidance all the way through this plan. So we created two groups that are working directly with CZB all the way along. Those are a steering committee that's about 20 or 23 people. It includes city council members, President Whitfield and Councilor Delgado, as well as Denise Jordan from the Springfield Housing Authority, and a number of relevant city department heads, representatives of community interests, nonprofit and for-profit developers, landlord and home builder interests, the Public Health Institute, and Mass Mutual. We've been meeting monthly since February. We also have and I will say Samantha Hamilton is also on that. I left her name off because she's on both that committee and the next one that she is the convener for. So we engaged the Public Health Institute to convene a resident advisory committee that has about 25 people that are coming, that have also been meeting regularly with CZB and understanding the data that they're showing us about our own city, and then discussing what that means and where to go with those recommendations. We are now at the point where we have looked, CZB has looked at a lot of data. I want to say one of the things that's been really interesting is they have pulled a lot of internal city data and analyzed it in ways that the city itself has not done before. So really, we've gotten a look at a lot of internal issues and processes and information. They are now at the point where they have recommendations coming out of all of that. Well, I should say one other piece that has happened also is that we had open house, 3 open houses in April that shared the data and collected community information. So community input into the plan. So this is really pulling in on all of that information and now giving us back initial recommendations and initial thoughts on where we should go. I do want to say that the recommendations have been presented to the steering committee and the resident advisory committee. There's a lot of support for them. And now we're starting to share them more broadly and see, get reactions from the rest of our community. So with that, I want to turn it over. I guess he introduced himself, but I want to turn it over to Charles Bucchi, our consultant from CZB, and have him present the recommendations.
Hey, Jerry. Thank you. How is the audio okay, everyone?
Yes,
Councilman
it is.
Delgado, is that work fine?
Yes.
Okay. So Amber and we've got a set of slides, very few to go through. Let me say a few things, if you don't mind, at the front end. The ice in February notwithstanding, it has been a complete pleasure to work with the community. I just want to say our opportunity to engage at the staff level, Mayor Sarno, with Tim Sheehan, with Jerry, her colleagues, Brian Connor, Tina Sullivan, the folks at the staff have been just a dream to work with. And I think in every way. So when there was data we needed, we were given the raw data generally by the end of that day. And so if there are stones, left unturned, it's not because of staff, it's probably because of a failure on my part or our part. Staff has just been, the expertise has been great. So Councilman, I just want to say that at the front end.
Thank you, Charles. Before you keep going, I just want to make sure I acknowledge my colleague, Councilor Victor Davila, who also walked in as well. Good segue there.
And likewise, we pride ourselves, almost 2.5 decades of time in a variety of communities across, dozens of states, just in a commitment to a mixed method, lots of different data, crunched in lots of different ways. And qualitatively, the work with the RAC led by Samantha Hamilton has just been peerless. And so, every time I feel like I'm walking into, a bit of a storm, the settling, facilitation, and professionalism, from Public Health Institute has been exceptional. That's also occurred on the steering committee, and just honestly, a shout out to Council President Whitfield and Denise Johnson, who've weighed in at the steering committee meetings to sort of, put me in my place when I needed to be, set so and given, given very good guidance. And then finally, also Keith Ferry at Wayfinders has just been a tremendous asset along the way. So with that,
I just wanted to correct
Yep.
Denise Jordan's name. You said Johnson. I just wanted to.
I'm sorry,
Mhm.
I apologize.
That's okay.
That's my handwriting. That's just my terrible memory and handwriting. So I apologize, Denise. So we've got just a few quick slides. We'll give you a quick overview of the schedule we're operating under, and then go through that. While Amber's pulling that up, as Jerry had alluded, we looked at a lot of data. We looked at sales data. We went back more than a decade. We looked at every single sales transaction, across the region. We looked at tax data. We looked at code violation data, crime data, and of course, lots and lots of other housing and socioeconomic data. And then we had the opportunity to do something extra with Springfield. We can't do it with every community. We were able to do it with Springfield. We put a set of eyes on each one of 36,000 residential structures, our own set of eyes, or a group of interns we worked with, and then evaluated from the curb, to give us a sense of really, where the conditions were. I myself led the interns through, a training exercise, walked, for half a day with them, and it's a great piece of data that when combined with the other data sets really has helped us tell a lot. So next slide. So as Jerry had alluded to, thanks Amber, that we're winding this down. We are, in the top of the 7th. We spent the winter really trying to understand the market, analyze it, work with Jerry and her team, work with the RAC and with the steering committee to share our discoveries, test some hunches, kick things around. That sort of bleeded into a second phase, which is really taking a deep look at what the numbers, told us, what our own eyes were telling us as we're, taking a look around the city, in terms of what kind of issues do we have to deal with for a good comprehensive housing strategy? What are the opportunities there? And then right now we're in the process of plan development. We've got a pretty good outline for it. I would say if you're looking for a metaphor, we've got all the wet ingredients in one bowl, all the dry ingredients in one bowl. We've not yet made a cake batter. It's not in the oven, but we're pretty sure, we've got everything accounted for. It's not too late, but a few weeks from now, we will be putting it in the oven. So we absolutely, cherish, inputs and ideas that you can share with us. So that's where we are. We'll try to button it up in the next few weeks, get this thing to you all for the city's consideration forthwith. Amber, next one. So we've got, I think, just 5 or 6 high-level things. I know that time is, short supply. So I'll move through pretty expeditiously, and then if you've got questions, just we'll be happy to take them as they come. Okay, you don't need to wait to the end unless that's protocol. Okay, next slide. And for Sam and others who've been with us on the journey, they will have seen this for the 45th time. So if your screen goes out, Sam, I get it. No worries. If you got something else to do. Okay, so we're going to go through this slide sort of long and slow, of them. There's a lot here. Okay, so there's a combination of issues we got to pay attention to. Older stocks, older stocks that for decades have not been poorly maintained, low standards across too many circumstances, across too many neighborhoods, high crime, and a lot of disorder, okay? All that adds up to low demand, and that translates into lower prices than surrounding communities. And what all that really means is our conclusion from the empirical evidence is it's clearly a weak market city, no surprise, okay? And here's the key point: it's lacking demand sufficient to generate value sufficient to properly take care of the city. Okay. What you see here are three maps. Each one is a standalone map in their own right. The far right one is a compilation of maybe 30 different maps. But let's work from left to right. In the left, you see a parcelized image of the city of the city of Springfield. And what this does is it shows you how we evaluated each one of those 36,000 residential structures. So we looked at a structure is a single family home or a duplex or 3 or 4 or an apartment building, right? If it's residential in nature, we put a set of eyes on it. And if it was in really great top of the market condition, it's a dark green. And if it's in significant distress, it's a deep dark maroon. Okay, so that's the sort of color spectrum you'll see on the far left, right? When a city is generating sales, and when those sales are converting to property values, and when those property values are converting to a tax base, and when that tax base is sufficient to pay for enough code enforcement officers and enough police officers and enough maintenance of the streets frequently enough, and of sidewalks and of street trees and of parks and so forth and so on, that map on the left will look mostly light green with some yellow. Okay. The condition is there's a direct correlation to the condition of the property there and its value on the market, and then subsequently its value to it, to the tax base. So that if we had no other conversation today, the most important thing to know is that map should be light green, and it's not. And so now, and until it's light green, the city will be in a fiscal mess. No matter how well the city is managed, and we've looked at all the Standard & Poor and Moody reports, it's very well managed. No matter how well it's managed, until that map is green, there will be fiscal challenges that are just going to have people pulling their hair out. So the job is to turn it green. And that has a delta, right? Both on the capacity side and the resource side. That map is also connected to the map in the middle. So this is it's a point in time map, just as the map on the left is. This one shows more than 7,900 non-trivial, non-traffic crimes that we mapped across the city the previous calendar year. That is an insane volume with insane geographic compaction. And there are high statistical correlations that connect the condition of the property to the far left and the presence of crime in the middle. I don't have these maps for you today because I can't decide which map I like the most all the time. But we've got maps that show your code violations, maps that show where your tax cheats, are. Every kind of map, we've got it. And they all collapse on top of one another and are mirror images of one another, right? So the map in the middle, where you see crime, rest assured, that's where your tax cheats are, right? And where you see crime, rest assured, that's where your code violations are, right? And so when and then also the inverse of that is true. Where you see those on the far left, those yellow, orange, and ochre, and then maroon colors, that's where your lowest property values are, and the greatest cost of curing those issues. So there's an inverse relationship there. When we pack all that in, it gives us our map on the right. The map on the right shows you where those dark blue areas are. Those are places in real trouble. They basically don't pay for themselves. Okay. They are an absolute nightmare on the crime side, a nightmare on the code enforcement side, a absolute nightmare on the tax cheat side, right? And on deferred maintenance and the absence of capital upgrades on the residential real estate side. Okay. This is a critical map on the far right because it tells us how to think about strategy, right? Importantly, what to do where. Next slide. Okay, so to sort of bring all this together, what this means is if you lack the means to take proper care of the city because the tax base is low, right? Your roads are in disrepair because the tax base isn't there. You have spotty policing, an absolutely broken code enforcement system, problems throughout the school system. What you end up with is just too many residents and businesses question whether to stay in the city. You can't sustain that. You can't sustain that. And before they get to that moment, many residents will say, they'll question whether they should stay in the unit they're in, on the block they're on, in the neighborhood they're on. So they may, if possible, if they are committed, either committed to Springfield or can't afford to leave Springfield, but have got to get off their block, what they're doing is questioning whether, they should stay on their block, and they're going to find someplace else in the city to go. Okay. So this happens it's a fractal. It happens at every level. Now, all of these are fixable problems. Okay. Each one of these and all these together. Okay. But they do require attention. Okay. And it means focusing on making the market healthy and functional. Right. So when we get to thinking about a strategy and what we would recommend you pursue, it's not the real estate health of any particular building, although that's a piece of it. It is how to make the market healthy overall. So we like the diagram on the right as a teaching tool, both for ourselves. It's a good reminder to us, when we're working at a granular neighborhood level, and for clients. And that's to think of neighborhoods or sets of blocks, perhaps even one block, then also a whole city as comprised of four pieces of a cycle, right? And one is the market, starting at top left, right, on that northwest corner, which is who's living in the neighborhood. Okay, whoever is living in the neighborhood has a certain amount of wherewithal, right? And that leads to some capacity both on the willingness side and the ability side to take care of the property. So that could be a landlord, an investor owner who's got some degree of ability and willingness to take care of the property, high or low, right? And that in turn, if we work clockwise, leads to the conditions. The conditions become vital because they are effectively a billboard for your city. Every time somebody is new to your city and they visit the city, they're looking around and they're looking at the conditions. And the first thing those conditions project an image, right? And so a really good strategy has to think carefully about how these pieces fit together. And all right, so next slide. So to make the city, the housing market functional and healthy, right? Job number one is to grow demand. Okay. You have a demand problem here. Okay. Which is a fancy word for willingness. So the work we've got to do together is we've got to transform one block at a time. Okay. Willingness to stay, willingness to maintain to higher standards, willingness to upgrade. That's not just maintaining, but that's actually upgrading. And then, when it's appropriate, if it's appropriate, willingness to move to the city, right? So it's a retention and an attraction strategy, but there are some real important willingness boxes to check. To accomplish this, our view is a good strategy. The one we're inclined to recommend to you has two parts. Absolute laser-like focus on resident quality of life. It's just too damn chaotic on too many blocks for families who are just trying to hold it together to get from Monday to Friday in one piece. Okay. And so we've got too much disorder, too much crime, too much, tax avoidance, right? We've got too little, code compliance, and we don't have good systems to get there, frequently enough on the right blocks at the right time for residents to feel like this city works for them. That's across the city. That's number one. It's got to be there. Okay. So there are a lot of tools that a lot of communities have succeed with across the country. In the strategy we'll give you, we'll include a reference to as many of the most appropriate tools as possible, but front of mind is going to have to be rental property registration and inspection, and a very robust code enforcement system that in many respects looks nothing like what you have now. Okay. Second big piece, leg of the strategy, is the desirability of homes has got to be addressed. Okay. There's years of catch-up work on deferred maintenance and a lot of upgrades that have got to occur. Okay. So on the first, that is a big check to write and a lot of institutional behavioral change. And on the second, a lot of big checks to write and a lot of behavioral change by property owners, right? So those are a lot of changes that if you want a healthy housing market, there's a lot of change over a number of years is going to be necessary, okay? There is no quick fix up for this stuff. Next slide. If you want to make this market healthy, it also, and then work, it's going to have to work differently than it has in the past, okay? Right now, essentially your number one value proposition is that we're less expensive than the other guys. That's not good enough, okay? You've got to be better than the other guys, okay? And to be better than the other guys, we're going to recommend you break the city into parts, right? And in some parts of the city, really focus on stabilizing conditions. And in other parts of the city that are already stable but vulnerable, work on incentivizing reinvestment. Okay, next slide, please. Let's go back a slide. I'm sorry.
Hey, Charles, can I just stop really quickly?
Councilman, yes.
Can you just re-explain the colors on the map for some folks?
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. So where you see like a pink, if the coloration is working from the slides, you should see some real sort of hot pink areas. And then, like super almost rich pink. You'll see that like in Forest Acres, and then a lighter hue, over in Brightwood, for example, or parts of 16 Acres. Do you see that? And that should work its way into a mint, a light blue, and a dark blue. Councilman, for those areas that are really, really blue, we really got to calm things down. We've got to really stabilize conditions. Okay. You got to be able to get out of your car, walk around the block at 11 o'clock at night and do so safely. And that has to happen on a Thursday evening, on a hot Thursday evening in July. Okay. And if that doesn't happen, your housing market will not work. Okay.
Thank you. We do have a question from Councilor Davila.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. Charles, thank you for the presentation. But
yes, sir.
Quick question. Looking at this map, Charles, I did notice that you have downtown pretty much blue, deep blue, which is the worst conditions. Can you give me a quick 10-second overview as to why that is there, particularly since we have invested so much effort into it? And what is that saying, or what do you guys notice about the market condition, the housing conditions in that area, which is all buildings and apartments?
Yeah, if I had a do-over, I'd redo. I would be more granular, Councilman, on that. That's an own goal by me. That I should have extruded several key blocks of downtown as not quite so troubled. Okay. So so you're right to call out that parts of downtown are far more stable than other sections. However, it is also true that right around downtown, there's so much fragility, okay, that downtown itself, because it is quite vulnerable, right? So I would say that the downtown work that has gone on has been exceptional, just exceptional, right? Number two, it should be continued with, and your foot should be completely down on the gas pedal, right? So you cannot afford to take your foot off the gas pedal downtown. But in order to actually get the market to work, so the downtown is a heavily subsidized endeavor right now.
Right.
A market works when it needs less subsidy. For downtown to need less subsidy, well, it's always going to need quite a bit, simply because the historic nature of the structures is very expensive to cope with, okay? Even if everything is ideal. But one of the things holding downtown back is that just 150 yards outside of downtown in any direction is just too much chaos, okay? Too much uncertainty, just too much property degradation, too much disorder for investors to feel really confident downtown. So it's a long-winded way of saying I probably should have done a better job with some of the fine grain coloration on the map. And I hope that was responsive.
Right. Thank you, Charles. Charles, I do have another question, but I'm going to wait until the end, probably.
Yeah.
But let me just give you a quick preview, Charles. You have used the word chaos at least 3 different times already today.
Yeah.
And I would like you at the end to elaborate more on that, because I'm going to be honest, there has been some stuff in this report so far that has hit me in the gut and pretty hard. And so I think this is a very eye-awakening moment that we as a city have got to really sit down and talk and figure something out. So, but anyways, just give you a preview of that, and I would love to hear more of the report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No, thank you, Counselor. Go ahead, Charles, continue, because I know you've got a lot more, and I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of questions. So I'd love for you to be able to get through the presentation.
Okay. Don't worry, it's not a lot more. I'm not going to hit you over the head for too long. I promise. I promise. And it's the right question, and it's a great question. Okay. Before I respond, permission to be candid with you.
I think you've been candid thus far, so.
Don't hold back.
Approve, Charles, approves.
Approve.
Okay. There's too much shit going on in the city. Okay. There's too much garbage that just sits around. Okay. There's too much graffiti. There's too much garbage. There's too much noise. There's too many folks on motorcycles screaming through at different hours, right? There's too much quality of life crime that makes it a really shitty experience for your average resident to walk out of their home and to their car and feel good about it, right? In a way that can be guaranteed, right, all the time. You got to clean it up. Your housing market simply will not work. Nobody in their right mind is stroking a $300,000 or $400,000 check, okay, if they got to close their kitchen window because they do not want to listen to sirens all day long. Can't sell a house. You just can't get top dollar for real estate until you get your act together on the ground. And until you get top dollar for the real estate, you don't have the tax base to actually take care of things. Which means instead of roads being, regraded every 20 years, they get regraded every 40 years. when I come out of my hotel, when I come out of whether it's the Sheraton or Marriott, and I go walking, down over to Wayfinders at 9 o'clock to just sort of prowl around and see how does downtown feel this spring, right? And what I'm listening to, okay, are motorcycles like fly through and blow through every red light possible, right? You couldn't get me to buy a condo there at any price. If you can't sell it to me, who loves you, you're not going to sell it to the market.
I think we're good there, so I would continue. We're taking it all in.
If I ride my bike, if I bring my bike as I want to do, and I go up and down Carew and there's garbage and graffiti all over it, I'm thinking to myself, why would I buy a house in Liberty Heights? If I'm going up and down Belmont, right, and there's graffiti and garbage and noise, why would I do that? Got to get cleaned up.
Can I chime in a little bit, Charles?
Yeah.
And Charles has given us this level of candidness and honesty. And when I hear it, I am also in belief of this experience exists for residents. It exists for someone that they're living in an environment where they don't feel safe. And the candid nature of it makes us wake up. It also reminds us that we do deserve a Springfield that is livable and lovable, right? And for that reason, if we're experiencing these things, whether it's working and walking downtown or living in other neighborhoods, I live in East Forest Park. I hear about crime in Forest Park. I'm concerned about my neighbor. I'm not in the same neighborhood, but I'm not too far away. I'm concerned about my neighbor in Mason Square. I'm concerned about my neighbors that live downtown. So it's a desire and a deserving responsibility for us to consider what will this take for us to make Springfield a top tier place to live in. So we have to get rid of those bad actors. We have to address the issues of our aging community, which is just old, beautiful buildings that needs a lot of love to get back up to speed. But we have to also find that those people that come into Springfield, but do not hop right back out. Come in and live, maybe move to another neighborhood, but have the ability to upgrade throughout the city. And we don't have that transitional experience overall, because they would come in and if they have one bad encounter, they're immediately saying, I would rather go somewhere else. And that's sometimes folks' experience. It only has to happen one time. And I've lived here for 30 years, and I've lived through interactions on different parts of my city that my family's still here because we love the city. Mass Ave, Mason Square, Old Hill neighborhood, now East Forest Park. But I'm not the norm of what someone might experience, right? They might not stay around as long as we are the lovers of our community. So we just want to make sure we're building, my summary is a place that we love, that folks that want to stay here to value and love, and the folks that come in would have that same experience. So one bad interaction could just wash away a potential good resident.
Amber, can you go back to our healthy neighborhoods? So we developed this maybe more than 25 years ago. And so in many respects, this is sort of strategy in one drawing. Okay. So Samantha said it exactly right? A place we love, right? So if the conditions aren't, if you see in the bottom right conditions, okay, that's everything. It's the conditions of the parks, the streets, the street trees, the sidewalks, the street, the front porches, it's everything. Okay. If it communicates over there in the image on the bottom left, if it communicates, this is a place we love, right? House after house, block after block, right? The rest takes care of itself. Right. And so it very much what you want to do is point every tool you have towards that image that Sam laid out, and then work backwards and say, okay, what kind of conditions do I need to get that? What's the capacity I need to do that? Where do I intervene in this cycle? Okay. This is strategy in a diagram right there. So let's jump forward, Amber, and I think they're done with me. Let's get, if I get so I think this is a transformation commitment where Councilman Delgado and you know we're pushing, we think you want to push for, okay? And so there really needs to be a willingness to change. We're under no illusions. We're pretty sober about this. It's a lot of hard work, right? But there's got to be a real will here. This is not the time for half measures. Okay. I think the second is you got to be looking long term. So don't be thinking this is 36 months, you're in, you're out, you're done. I wouldn't do it. Right. So I would just, unless you're in for the pound, don't be in for a penny. Save your pennies, do something else with it. Right. So I just wouldn't do it. I think that I'm convinced that you've got great partners outside the city in the nonprofit sector, at the state, and in the corporate sector that will join you if that commitment is there, right? And I think what they'll be looking for is your own blood, sweat, tears, and your own money, you know, as evidence that you've got this willingness to change. And I think that's on two fronts. You got to be looking at a lot of project gap financing and then the sufficient staffing that goes with it. So you're not getting out cheap. Okay. I wish I could tell you there was a way out cheap. There's a way out. There's a way through. It's just not cheap. Okay. And then I think, you know, to the extent that reversion to the mean, you know, which every human being, I do, you know, every time I have a New Year's Day, you know, resolutions, you know, about February 1, you know, that I've screwed them up. Okay. So I revert to business as usual all the time. You know, I know it, I get it in my own life, and we see it in our clients. But if you're inclined, you know, to tilt back that way, do consider the following. Your tax base it's tethered to the healthier housing market. You actually can't run the city well unless the housing market is functioning. The second is the region's going to contract. You know, the state and region are going to contract, but the region's going to contract sooner than the state. Okay. So you got to know that makes it even harder. Okay. Because that's deflationary pressures over time. Okay. And then business as usual, it means the middle class is going to continue to exit the city. And you can't screw around with the mill rate and the assessment process, but so many times before, you know, just it's a pile on, right? So it may not feel like it because I've been pretty hard on you the last 45 minutes, but we're bullish on you. We've got a great senior staff, like as I said. The folks who've served on the steering committee are superb. The RAC has been fantastic. All of that tells me you've got all the horsepower to pull this off, but it'll take work and money and a real commitment. And I should probably pause there.
A lot to digest here. I luckily or unluckily have been part of this steering committee and have been to some of these meetings and I've been one of the folks with a lot of questions and comments. So first of all, I just want to say, Charles, thank you for putting what has been a number of weeks into 45-minute commentary. I do want to make a couple comments, and then I'll open it up to everyone else. And I think I've mentioned this to Jerry before. While this is being kind of marketed to us as a housing plan, from what I've seen, in my opinion, this is much larger than a housing plan. When you're talking about housing and crime and all the different things you mentioned, to me, this is a much larger strategy for the city that involves economic development, it involves public safety. To me, it's a much larger thing than a housing plan, because I think housing, what we're seeing, if I'm reading this right, is the symptoms of other things that are causing the housing market to be where it's at, if I'm paraphrasing you correctly. I do have a couple questions, because you did say we have a weak housing market. And one of the things that I've read lately, particularly the Northeast in general, is that places like Hartford and Springfield are hot housing markets. So I guess my question to you on that end is, how do you explain, on one end, us being called a hot housing market, but on your report, we're a weak housing market? So is it who's buying the housing? Like how do you explain that contrast there?
Permission to be candid?
Yeah.
Hold on, let me hang on, hold on, Charles, I gotta hold on to my seat, go ahead.
Actually, before he starts to answer that, I do want to say, early on in this, to the first thing you said, early on, they said to us, we could deliver a usual housing plan, or we think we can give you more advice. If you'll let us keep looking at your data and go bigger, we have more to tell you. And we said, sure,
Yeah.
Go ahead. So I do want to say that piece.
Yeah.
And then Charles, go ahead.
We have a few job openings, and whoever wrote that article suggesting Hartford and Springfield are hot markets, we wouldn't hire them. It's so now to shift and be more serious for a minute. Prices. So let's be clear. Prices are rising. Okay.
Right.
That's where. So when somebody looks at rising prices and stops there, they can fairly quickly and in a straight line, Councilman, get to it's a hot housing market. Okay. And they can, when they look at rising prices and sort of say, okay, let's look at Rochester and Syracuse and Austin and Raleigh and Durham and Boston and Worcester and Lowell and Springfield and Hartford and blah, 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 right? Let's pack them all in and look at, are prices rising and how fast are they rising compared to yesterday, compared to one another? And they stop there. Yes, it will look hot. Okay. But when you look underneath it, what you will find is that they're not rising because people are in a rush to buy. They're rising because not many, for a number of reasons. Number one, there aren't a lot of homes on the market. And the reason that we don't have a lot of homes on the market is that we have a lot of aging homeowners in Western Mass, in Western Central Connecticut, from Albany all the way through, through 90 to Worcester. There's a lot of aging owners who are sitting on 3% and 4% mortgages, if not fully seasoned, mortgages or free and clear. And it makes no sense for them to put their house on the market unless they get more dollars than anyone will actually pay, because they would have to buy the next house at 5, 6, 7, 8% on the market. Or even if they could, there is not a senior facility for them. So they're staying parked. Their bus is parked the same way Paraguay is parking their defense against France in the World Cup. They're just parked. Okay. They're not moving. Okay. And because they don't move, a city like Springfield, which should have, several hundred homes on the market, each of those important spring months, right? From end of April, through June, and then in the fall market, September, October, 4, 5, 6, 100 homes listed. The inventory, has been shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And with fewer houses on the market at exactly the same time, millennials are aging into the market to become aspiring buyers. You have a crunch. You're not growing in population. You're not, and meanwhile, your inventory is tight and interest rates are high. So when you look deeper than simply what's the price, what you realize is the reason for the price is not a reflection of growth, and it's not a reflection of demand, which is a synonym for hotness. It's a reflection for constrained supply.
No, thank you for that. And one thing you did touch upon there, which is something that I've said before, I think to Jerry, is population wise, we have stayed around 152 to 155,000 for the last 30 years,
That is correct.
while communities like Worcester have grown tremendously, Providence in the Northeast. And so that tells me, something's shifting within the population. But I'll leave it at that because I want to give my colleagues opportunity because I could talk forever about this. So I had Councilor Whitfield first, followed by Councilor Dodd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So great presentation. I've also heard the information a couple times, and I like being on this particular steering committee because I had prior to this coming about, I had reached out to Jerry about a rental registry, and so you proved that that is a good thing to have, but we would need the code enforcement staff to also complement that rental registry, which is a big investment. One thing that I missed in this presentation was some of the solutions where most people will look at that screen and say, oh my gosh, look at that blue area. That got to be our focus point, that dark blue, the Old Hill, Upper Hill, Mesa Square area primarily. And that's not what we got in the other presentation as the first focal point of where we should laser focus the resources. And I was just wondering, are you going to come back and talk about that part? Because I think that is really, really important for the counselors to see and hear.
Can we
That's the
pull the
part.
slides back up? Council President, would you be okay if we pull the slides back up?
Yes.
Amber, could you pull up our typology? So Council President, let me correct the record, okay? Because chances are I misspoke, okay?
Okay.
So let's take a look. Let's just take a look at McKnight, Old Hill, Upper Hill, just as an example, okay?
Mhm.
All right. Absolutely, positively, that needs to be a focus area, okay? Out of the gate, okay? The issue is the focus work you do there has to be different than the focus work you do in Liberty Heights or in parts of Forest Park, right? Or parts of Six Corners. What the typology is really saying is you can't do the same thing in every place because not every place has conditions that are ready for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not so much that there's not a focus as if I remember what you said on the blue areas, it's what we're focusing on. And those areas right now are just too unstable right now. We got to stabilize more blocks, right? For the market to begin to work, right? So, and that's the only clarification I'd make. Okay. So you're gonna have to undertake pretty fine grained, surgically precise kinds of work, right? We like, and I'm pretty sure I mentioned this with our steering committee last time we met. We don't think you want to work across a whole neighborhood. It's your 17 neighborhoods are just too big, right? You want to work, on a handful of blocks at a time where we can really get the whole block to function. And we will be recommending to you all what we call a whole block strategy. Right? In our view, there's an exception to every rules, but having said that, the rule you want to follow is if you're going to be on a block, you got to be on the whole block.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to be on that whole block, you need to be on 5 or 6 contiguous blocks, which means you're not going to do anything on one house unless you're doing something across every house across 5 to 6 blocks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you will not get traction, okay? So in some places, we will be recommending much more stabilization effort. In other folks, in other areas, much more sort of revitalization work. In some places, possibly redevelopment, but in all cases, a whole block strategy, a whole block, whole cluster strategy. So you get traction. And
Okay.
and then one final point, and it's going to mean, using every tool in the toolkit, right? It means tapping into Jerry's brain while you're using the fire marshal, while you're coordinating with police, while you're, revamping code enforcement. It's all of that tied to which streets you pave, so the whole thing comes together like music.
Right. And I just wanted to make one more point. I know that it'll be more expensive to just focus on the dark blue areas. I think that's something that you mentioned. Um, over other areas. And then I just wanted to, when we look at this map,
Yep.
there were areas that used to be in the blue and the dark blue, which was Six
Yep.
Corners and Brightwood. So when I seen that Six Corners was not in the dark blue, I was proud of that. But the money, the resources came from the tornado, right? And we got a new school, new street, new houses, new. But it just proves that, and even Brightwood. So Brightwood would have been in the blue years ago. But they had a strategy in the neighborhood. So I just said that to point out that it can be done.
I
Like
love it.
we might be struggling right now in a lot of areas that do need to be addressed. Especially those dirt bikes and all those things that you mentioned and the noise levels and things like that. But I just wanted to mention that it can be done, and and I'm here to see it all the way through and put a little bit of pressure on making sure we get commitment and the funding that we need to make it happen. So thank you, Councilor Delgado.
Thank you, Councilor Davila.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Charles, first time that I had the report, first of all, thank you for this. I'm gonna be kind to myself, Charles. Thank you for not BSing us. Oftentimes, I think these are sugar coated for us, and I like the honesty of this report. With that being said, if you indulge me, Mr. Chair, I do have a few questions. Let me start backwards if I may, Charles. You mentioned the middle class leaving the city and that it will continue to leave the city. Can you give me some data or Jeffrey, Geraldine, as to what that middle class exodus look like? How much of the middle class are we losing?
Off the top of my head, I can't do that, but I can do that within 2 or 3 hours. I'll get you specifics, but I think it's it's like a slow drip faucet, Councilman, right?
Yeah.
It's not a rush, okay? What's happened is it's just slow. And so and also the middle is broadly defined, right? So it's working in middle, right? It's a big piece. But for a city to function, the working in the middle has to be a big fat piece of the pie, okay? And it's just gotten smaller and smaller over time, right?
Right.
And I will give you the numbers, but let me share a related number that is in my mind, even though I don't have the exact number right now for you for your specific question, because I think it's related, okay? For every year, for the last 35 years, each week you've added 3 more households under the poverty line. It's actually 2.93, but it's 3.
A week?
Yep, for 35 years. And so the way we think about that from a housing point of view is every one of those households is seeking a home. Their purchasing power is terribly low. They're vulnerable to exploitation. You're a city full of exploitative absentee owners.
Yeah.
They're happy to take advantage of those three households. Those three households each week with barely two nickels to rub together, okay, are going to match with a unit that is in terrible condition, owned most likely by a pretty bad landlord. And so as that happens, right, if you're adding that and your population is more or less steady, out the other side, right, are households of higher means leaving. I just don't know what the numbers are right at this moment, but I will get them to you.
Thank you, Charles. I definitely would like to hear more middle class specific data.
Yeah.
Know that middle class is
Thank you. Absolutely.
the big, right? We cannot have an exodus of the middle class. So Charles, before I ask you my question, let me say, because you talked about chaos before, at least 3 or 4 different times, and you gave me a quick overview as to what, in your opinion, or what the data shows you. And you talked about the bicycles, you talked about the conditions of the housing. Before I ask you, I want to take a quick second to say, Mr. Chair, that I recognize the hard work that the police department, the code enforcement, and all city departments all throughout have been doing with very limited resources and staff. So I want to put that up. But I also want to say, Mr. Chair, that I think Charles brought up a point that is critical. And that is you call that, put my glasses on real quick here, Charles, a broken code enforcement. And then you talked about spotty policing. Can you elaborate on both of those, please, if you may?
Sure. So in both cases, you're really the culprit here is insufficient resources. You can't ask a building commissioner to deliver robust code compliance and robust code enforcement with too few staff, right? Yeah. It's just impossible. But you can't have more staff if I don't have more of a tax base. It's an absolute chicken and the egg, right? And similarly, your chief is completely overwhelmed by just inadequate resources, right? In both cases, I suspect, you're going to want some refinements to strategy, but refinements to strategy, they're going to still leave you stranded on the 20-yard line unless your building commissioner and your police department have more resources, right? So you're going to need a strategy shift and you're going to need more resources.
Now, when you
can I chime in? And I apologize for cutting in.
Go ahead, Samantha. Go ahead.
And it's only because I have to head to another meeting. I do want to acknowledge that through all these conversations, community voices and community feedback has been given candidly to Charles, as Charles has candidly given it to us. And with that in mind, when we think about the solutions, it also has to be from a community lens of what is the community response with organizations, nonprofits coming into the fold. And I know some of our steering committee meetings, we believe that it's a multi-tier strategies with a lot of these things. So when we think about the community safety side on what needs to be done, outside of thinking about the police enforcement, there's beautification that can happen. There's signs and lines, there's lighting, and there's rebuilding our play and livable space that neighbors would respond to, as well as addressing the issue of violence and crime in our community. But our residents have sat with this and they've given feedback that these IDs are important, but we still have to center it around real people and their response and reactions to this finding. So not everybody's going to fold in and agree, but they also see that it's for a better Springfield. So I just wanted to chime in on that and say those things.
Thank you, Samantha. And if I may, Mr. Chair, my last question. So Charles, you talked about insufficient resources and inadequate resources. Are you talking about staffing levels, monetary, or both?
Let's just take code enforcement, for instance.
Yeah.
I think your building commissioner's job is a near impossible task, right? It's a complaint-driven system largely. Rental property owners are not held to account, and there's not really the means to hold them to account. And there aren't enough bodies paid a high enough salary to actually get, really the robust response you need. I was struck, trying to think which city I was studying yesterday or the day before.
It's gonna come back to you at 3 o'clock in the morning, Charles.
Rochester, New York. We've worked for Rochester for years. They have really the nation's best lead abatement program. Just a phenomenal effort. And it's all part of their code enforcement system, which is itself part of their rental property registration system. So they're tying, public health, to property conditions and investor registration.
Right.
And so the reason I mention it is, they are larger than you all, but not so huge, much larger. And there are 33 full-time code enforcement officers and six interns, on a constant basis. You need really a lot of bodies to pull this off.
Right. Thank you, Charles. And Mr. Chair, I'm just going to share my thoughts on all this. I think, and Jerry, one of the things that as Charles was talking, that I have asked every single year during the budget season to all department heads, do you have enough staff? Do you know what they'll tell me? Yes, we do. Then through the middle of the year, issues come up, and you know what they tell me? We don't have enough staff. Well, which one is it? Either you do or you don't. It seems very clear to me, Mr. Chair, that Charles had just told us that at least code enforcement, God bless their heart, needs more bodies. I don't want to hear next year when we're doing the budget, we have enough. I'm gonna call them out. Just the report says you need enough. And I'm sure the mayor is going to look at this, is going to make necessary adjustment, because we do need, it is clear to me we need code enforcement. Furthermore, Mr. Chair, I may say, I was having a conversation yesterday, as a matter of fact, and this revolving door that we have with our city employees, they come in, they get trained, then they leave. And where are they leaving to? Is the great question. If anybody knows, please let me know. It would also seem to me, sir, that the kind of off the scope of this report. My understanding is that we are the highest paid municipality in the area. But apparently we're not. Where are they going? I think we need to, at some point, really take a deep, comprehensive look at the salaries. Because you know what comes with retention, Mr. Chair? Experience. And you know what comes with experience? Positive, real, tangible results. And if we want the best result, we have to retain the best. Charles, thank you so much and for your presentation. and to Samantha's one. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay,
God bless.
thank you, Counselor. I know it's 6:08, so I want to be aware of everybody's time. I'm sure there's going to be many more conversations. Jerry, if you're willing to, and Charles, to come back once you have the final report, I think it'd be good. One of the things I would love to see in this is you mentioned Rochester, New York, and an example of a market that's doing certain things. While you're giving us strategies block by block, I'd love to see examples of other markets on what they've done well to turn some of this around, because I think we don't have to rewrite whatever the phrase is, rewrite the book or whatever it is, right? There's examples out there that we should be following that maybe we're not following, that we could be doing better. So I would say, examples of similar size cities, similar size, similar type of cities, would be one of the things that I'd like to see if possible as part of this report. The other piece I would say is, and I'm going to say this again, this is much larger to me. This is much larger than a housing strategy, right? One of the questions I had during the steering committee is like, who are we building the future Springfield for, right? And it seems like, you mentioned before, we've got to get higher incomes, but we also, in my opinion, we also have residents here that I'd love to see these residents, move up and stay with us in here, right? And I'm an example of a resident who was under the poverty, was on assistance, right? First generation here, and I've been able to do what I can. And there's similar stories. So while there's a lot of doom and gloom in this report, I think there are examples of folks, positive examples of communities in here working together in Springfield. So I want to make sure that we don't push aside those positive examples of the city. There is a lot that we need to work on, but I want to make sure that we're creating the future city for our current residents, and obviously we want to recruit other residents. So to me, there's a little bit of there's housing, there's economic development, there's economic mobility, I think, that needs to be in here. And one of the things that was just mentioned in terms of jobs, I think, to me, economic mobility and access to opportunities is one of the biggest things for Springfield that we could be seeing. And then the other piece, in connection to housing, that is always a sticking point for me, is this piece of homeowner occupied and the rental side. And I think there's a story within there that I want to make sure we look at. I just read a thing, I think last night. I don't know, I think it was a report of like countries with the highest percentage of millionaires or something like that. I don't know. I want to say it was like Switzerland. And in that, and again, this was online, so who knows the credibility of the source, but in that it said there was a piece on it that there was a lower home ownership rate in that place, but there was a higher investment in other things that created wealth for people to move up. So I just thought it was interesting. We're talking about, economic mobility. So I'll stop there.
Well, Counselor, if I could say one thing, I think it's really interesting timing, what's going on now. The City Start initiative that the city is also doing right now is very focused on financial mobility.
Yeah.
And economic, like individual economic empowerment. So
Correct.
To your point, I think, as we think about the people like you, how do we keep you in the city?
Correct.
How do we keep how do we grow people into the middle class and then keep them, while we're also investing in people so that they can grow into the middle class? And they're very complementary strategies, I think.
Yeah, but I think it's connected to this overall housing strategy that to me is everything else. So I see President Whitfield's hand, so I'd love to throw it to her.
Yep. Just because everybody is saying what they want, I want to just put my get my little 2 cents on what I want. Charles, I don't want you to change a thing. I want you to give it to me raw. we know that there's people that came here, grew. I'm also, as a single mom, went to upward mobility and things like that. I don't think that's what you were saying at all. I don't think that you were saying we necessarily have to bring in new people. But we do want to make sure that we improve the situations for our residents that we have here so they are able to become into the middle class as well. But our condition of our houses still don't allow that. They're gonna buy a house that's crappy. You're still gonna have to invest a lot of money into getting it to where it needs to be, and they really can't afford it. And then all these other things happen with foreclosure and all these other things because they can't just afford it. So I don't take anything that you say in a negative light. I just think that based on the study, you're keeping it real, and I like the rawness and I like the realness. We can always say code enforcement is doing the best. They're not doing the best. They're not doing the best that they can do. I'm sorry, they're not doing the best that they can do. They target neighborhoods, they target housing. I'm not putting them down, but I get the complaints on what they're doing. So no, every department is not doing the best. They might try to do the best, but they're not doing the absolute best that they can do. Resources is a factor, but also people are a factor too. So I'm not a sugarcoater. I'm not gonna make everything hunky dory and say that every department in the city of Springfield is doing the best that they can. Councilor Davila made a great point about when it's budget time, when they come to the budget and say, oh yes, please pass our budget because everything is kumbaya and we have everything we need. And then we get to the point mid-year, we don't have everything we need. We need more money. Can we use free cash to do that? And all these things. So I want you to keep giving it to us plain, real. This is the information that we need. We need to know what's wrong, what's going wrong in the city so that we can improve what is going wrong in the city. I'm not trying to bash anybody, but I still don't think Springfield is doing the best that we can so that we can grow to the capacity that we need to grow. And this is the information that we need, as raw and as real as it can be, so that we can get to the place where we are growing and get into the Springfield that we all love and we all want to stay and live in. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman, could I just have one more word at the risk of
Yes.
pushing the time a little? I've lived with this data for 6 months. I don't see it as doom and gloom. I really don't. Okay. As much as it's hard news, I think it's a place to start, number one. And I think Jerry would agree with me that my first reaction to the city was, oh my God, what a wonderful city you've got. Right. If it was literally, oh my gosh. Right. I called my partners and I said, if we could get them to take care of this damn place, this is an incredible city. Right. And I absolutely feel that way. So I want to use that to pivot to an important piece here. Code enforcement, getting that right, as an example, is absolutely 100% critical. You should not compromise. But the goal is code compliance. And so you also want to be doing code compliance assistance, right? While you've got a lot of bad actors who refuse to comply, there's a lot of elderly out there who can't get the ladder out of the garage and get up and clean the gutters, right? That's compliance assistance. And so from the street, they look the same, right? But the actual intervention is a little different. And that's why if we do this on a block by block level, and we really get to know our residents the next several years, right? And we are focusing on strengths, beginning with the residents, you have an opportunity, if you are all in on a cluster of blocks, block by block, to really get those blocks where you want them to be, right? I just want to, I don't feel the least bit worried about your future. I just know that, there's a lot of work between now and getting there.
I appreciate you saying that, Charles, because one of my thoughts on the code enforcement piece is, yes, we could always use more, but I don't think we're not going to get out of it by citing every single person. We're not citing our way out of the code enforcement issue. So appreciative that you said the piece on the assistance piece, because there are some folks who, whatever, so that's a good part. I also want to just commend the folks who've been on the steering committee who have been helping, because I know it's, Jerry and it's yourself, but folks like Samantha, Ms. Denise Jordan, and everybody else who's been part of the steering committee, because, we're getting so many different perspectives. And I think it's important to get all those folks in there. So I just want to make sure that I commend the folks who are giving their time to this effort, because I might have used the word doom and gloom, but I think this is stuff that we need to hear, and there are a lot of challenges and there's good things going, but we need to use this to move forward. I just don't want this to be another one of those studies that gets studied and then nothing ever happens about them. Because I think the city of Springfield has been studied several times over the last 20 or 30 years. And I'm tired of seeing a study that tells us what we need to do. And for me, it's about, the solutions and action. And so I'm hoping that this time is different and that we're actually moving forward. But, it takes the whole community involvement in this. And so not just the electeds, not just the smart people in City Hall, but the folks who live here. And so to that, I'm really appreciative that all those folks have been part of this process and will continue to be part of the process. So, and with that,
thank you for having us.
Great meeting. Hope and opportunity. Those are the words. Hope and
correct.
opportunity. I love it, Counselor.
I loved that. And I loved Sam's livable and lovable.
Yes.
I love that.
Livable and lovable. I love that too.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.